Welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion here at the National Ploughing Championships in Ratheniska in County Laois. I'm back on the live panel discussion now with a beef panel today. So I am joined by Piers Kelly, the head of Drystock with Teagasc, Joe Burke, the Meat and Livestock Senior Manager with Bord Bia, and of course our own Breifne O'Brien, our Agriland Technical Beef Writer, to talk all about things beef, which many farmers have been coming in asking us questions over the last couple of days here at the ploughing site. Piers Kelly, I'll come to you first. Beef prices on the up again, we'll say at the minute in recent weeks, but you couldn't really say that beef farmers have had a great year overall, or you know, like break-even prices in some scenarios are down on 2022. It's been a bit inconsistent.
Yeah, listen, it's kind of been one of those years where it's kind of been up and down. The weather, I suppose, has been a tough year at the start of the year. Cattle were out very early in February. We thought this could be the start of a very early spring. Unfortunately, it was the opposite. It was kind of mid-late April before people got out, which added costs to beef farmers. Then we moved into June. Over in the eastern half of the country, we started to get worried at that stage that we were heading into a drought, and even some people were feeding silage at that stage, silage that was only made a couple of weeks. And then sure, we all saw what happened in July and August. So from a cost point of view, and then we are where we are at the moment. It's a very early winter on some farms. You go down to, you know, parts of the country, down Limerick, down the west and that, talking about housing cattle at the moment, and a long winter. I suppose on the positive side, we saw fertiliser compared to 2022 did come down in price. So and there's a little bit less being used as well, as people kind of are teetering around with using less inputs. We see for the winter meal prices in the northern half of the country seem to be dropping, not so much in the southern half of the country. We probably expect that probably from about November onwards to see maybe meal prices in the southern half of the country dropping a little bit more as well. So they're the positives. Beef price, Joe can talk about that, I suppose, but I mean beef price, you know, the big problem with beef price was it dropped earlier than we expected it to. You know, we were expecting that kind of late June, early July, but it kind of came a month, 6 weeks earlier. So yeah, you're right, Stella. It's been an up and down year.
Up and down, yeah.
But overall, probably not too bad a year.
Yeah. Joe Burke, from Bord Bia's perspective, you might give us an outline kind of what beef numbers, beef kill numbers, as we head towards the end of the year and heading in towards the first couple of months of next year. What are they looking like at the minute?
Yeah, no problem. I suppose, and Piers touched on the price situation, and you know, you might be forgiven for thinking that, you know, maybe that prices were even down on last year's levels on average, but in fact they're up 7% for the year to date. And that probably is just a feature of the fact that prices were strong up until May. As Piers said, come mid-May, late May, started to drop, and really we're back 60 cents and more in cases, depending on the class of animals since then. So all of that 7% is all as a result of that kind of a strong start to the year. We've seen base prices then since that slip, you know, even back as far as 460. Probably recovering 5-10 cents in the last couple of weeks again, and even a bit more being paid since then. So certainly the signs of you know, a bit more positivity, a bit more optimism there. Markets are a bit better as well too in terms of the UK and continental European prices. So, you know, hopefully we can get back up into, you know, a more positive situation than we see them at the moment. But in terms of supply,
and the factors that drove that early drop, I suppose, in May, like Piers mentioned a couple there, but
yeah, really, I suppose it was demand driven more than anything else. Supply wise, so far this year we've killed 40,000 less cattle. That overall in comparison to this time last year, and there's no sign of any recovery coming anytime soon either. Cattle are slow enough to finish, and you know, I suppose where we normally might be seeing a few younger cattle coming through from now to the end of the year in previous years, I suppose people following some of the blueprints maybe the Teagasc and others have developed, finishing cattle at a young age, 19 and 20 months. That probably is likely to be a lesser feature this year because, as Piers touched on there, the weather-related challenges, cattle didn't just thrive as well on many farms as, you know, ideally we would have liked them to. But it was mainly demand-driven that, you know, demand for forequarter beef especially declined significantly in comparison to last year. And that was a reflection of, well, your quick service restaurant channels, your, you know, likes of McDonald's and Burger King, while they have increased their costs, or they've pushed on their higher costs onto consumers, and now, be it your burger meals or your different options, there are a good lot more expensive than they were going back a few years ago. So where we had really, really, really strong engagement with that category, with those restaurants and those items, for the last few years since COVID, since lockdown, it did meet a bit of resistance there. And similarly, even those same items, be it burgers or mince, even at retail, at supermarket level, where the price had been going up in the last couple of years, just a bit more challenging, particularly around Europe. UK, not quite as bad. Our exports to the UK are probably up about 5% on the same period last year, but exports to continental Europe are down. And that's mainly reflecting that kind of difficulty that we've seen over the summer months. Not necessarily just related to the higher priced cuts, even those 4-quarter cuts that had been commanding really strong prices. Some of that product had to be frozen, I suppose, during the summer in the anticipation that it would sell a bit better now going into the autumn months. It's only in the last few weeks that we've seen those values, those prices for, be it manufacturing beef or some other lower price cuts, start to steady and start to recover a bit.
Breifne, you've been chatting to an awful lot of beef farmers, beef breeders, factory agents, everything over the last couple of days this week in terms of what is on their mind. What are the biggest issues that farmers are talking about at the minute, beef farmers?
Yeah, Stella, I suppose there's 3 main issues that I see farmers in the beef sector talking about at the ploughing this year. I suppose weather, trade, and then scheme dates and deadlines, of course, is another one that a lot of guys are checking up on. So I suppose as regards to the weather, challenges, or there's been a lot of challenges with weather conditions this year. We had a really dry month of June and things were really starting to burn up. And then into July and August, obviously, we've had significant rainfall. At this time of the year, I suppose, as you know, things can change pretty fast with weather conditions, and a lot of areas across the country have had fairly heavy rainfall. It's caused issues with guys, farmers maybe trying to get reseeds done, things like that. And I suppose, as Joe and Pierce mentioned, that some farmers are considering housing stock at the minute. Weather also seems to have had an impact this year on livestock performance. So talking to factory agents, they've noted that carcass weights are down slightly. Maybe they were expecting larger numbers of cattle to come available at this time of the year. They seem to have been slightly delayed. I suppose the thing that remains to be seen with regards supplies is whether farmers will push these cattle on and will have them, I suppose, at the end of the year in November or December, or whether they'll be housed and fed over the winter, and whether they'll come available in February or March. That remains to be seen. And then in relation to the suckler farmers, and of course, well, all farmers, the scheme dates and deadlines, I suppose, you have a lot of farmers calling into the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine stand there, checking up, I suppose, to make sure everything is in order and they have a good service available there.
Pierce, I'll come back to you. Breifne just mentioned there a couple of the schemes and things like that. The National Beef Welfare Scheme was obviously opened up as well as another avenue of funding, I suppose, for beef farmers. Now, look at, as with all schemes, there's a bit of criticism of certain elements of that in terms of the IBR testing and that. But how is Teagasc engaging with beef farmers in terms of trying to get them signed up to these schemes, getting their payments? We know there's a delay. What are farmers giving you in terms of feedback?
Yeah, so as you say, Stella, there's a little bit, I suppose, negativity around the National Beef Welfare Scheme, and I suppose it's probably a little bit of surprise in terms of it's something different in terms of the IBR. The meal feeding, everybody, when that came out, there was a little bit of criticism of that. But the IBR one is one that, it's not going to cost the farmer anything. It's an extra payment. The payment is going to cover the full cost of the IBR. And as an industry, we're going to have to face up to the problem that is IBR, because we're talking about markets there a second ago. We don't have a national IBR program, and this is kind of dipping your toe in the water to say, well, what would a national IBR program maybe look like? Because if we don't get a national IBR program off the ground pretty soon, it could actually shut down all of our live exports, because a lot of the countries we're selling stock into are developing IBR programs, which means they can't take in certain categories of stock if you don't have a program. So I'd say, what we be encouraging farmers on the welfare scheme is sign up, join, talk to your vet about it, and if it does nothing else, it's going to tell you where your farm is from an IBR status, and you might be pleasantly surprised that your herd has absolutely no IBR animals showing up in it, and that you can then take measures to continue to make sure that that is the case. Or it may show up that, yeah, there is an issue there, and what are your options then to reduce IBR? Because what we've seen through a lot of our demonstration farm programs over the years, and we actually did this snapshot with AHI on our Better Beef program a number of years ago. We did it on about 29 farms, and the feedback we got from the farmers who did the pilot, if you like, IBR program back 4 or 5 years ago is the 50 or 60%, I can't remember the exact figure, farms that had shown up that they had some level of IBR. Some of them had quite a bit. When they actually got rid of it, it was like turning a light off overnight in terms of the reduction in antibiotics that those farms used. So yes, there is a little bit of resistance when something new comes in. There's a cost, and people say, oh yeah, listen, that's only for the vets and the labs to make money. But that's not the case. This is going to be hugely beneficial to the farmers who do identify that they have maybe a number of animals that have IBR. They identify that, they reduce the IBR in the herd. Long term, it's going to have a really beneficial impact on the farm. The other scheme that I suppose we're a little bit disappointed on the suckler side that we're not seeing a huge uptake on is the National Genotyping Programme.
Yeah.
So there's only a few thousand suckler herds signed up to that. And that's
where's the resistance there, Piers?
It's not. I'm just talking to ICBF even there this morning. It's hard to know, and I wouldn't say it's a resistance, Stella. I'd say what is it? It's a lack of awareness. So we had an open day down in Kildalton a couple of weeks ago, and we had ICBF there, and they signed up a number of people on the day who, when they explained what the National Genotyping Programme was, they immediately said, "Oh, sure, that's a no-brainer." So take for argument's sake a farmer who's in the new SCEP, the new suckler. So if they don't sign up to the National Genotyping Programme, they're going to have to wait until next summer to get the genotyping tags sent out to them to tag their calves. Whereas if they're in the National Genotyping Programme, they'll be able to tag them at birth. And that's a huge cost saving and time saving, big time saver, to be able to register the calves at birth. So I'd encourage all beef farmers, especially suckler farmers who are in SCEP, we're going to have to genotype the majority of the calves anyway, to join the genotyping programme, and they get the tags at birth.
That's very interesting. I'm going to move just to Joe quickly on a little bit out of your scope, Joe, but seeing as I have you now from Bord Bia, about, I suppose, the beef market in China. It was great news. It was great to get into China. It took long enough to get in, but probably maybe a little underwhelming to start off, a bit of a slow start in terms of getting the beef over there and their demand for it.
Yeah, and Stella, I suppose when the market opened up first, going back late 2018, early 2019, the potential then was really, really strong, and we did see exporters respond to that. And our exports, when we had access there at that time, again, early 2020 as well, exports, for the first half of that year were really encouraging. The market was strong. Again, a lot of four-quarter beef was put in there. And had it been open for the full year, we'd have gotten, over 20,000 tonnes, I think, in there. Unfortunately, it closed then through no fault of anyone's, really. It was a case of non-typical BSE or atypical BSE, which the Chinese authorities kind of responded to and reacted to. Unfortunately, fast forward a couple of years after we get back in again at the beginning of this year, it's a different market altogether than it was, that their overall import demand is down. Prices are not what they were over there, and they're buying much cheaper product from mainly Australia and even some from South America as well. So, it's just while the market is there and it's open, and some of the processors are still sending product there, but it would be a couple of cuts. It wouldn't be, a big, for example, cut like flank, or it wouldn't be, some of the bigger cuts that come from the shoulder of the animal. It tends to be smaller, just lighter individual pieces. So it's really only maybe a couple of kilos even from a carcass that might end up going to China at the moment. So hence the volumes to date this year have been very low. to be honest, in the short term anyway, we don't see a big recovery. A little bit similar on the pig meat side as well, that, pig meat prices are really strong. That's mainly been driven by a scarcity of pig meat in Europe, and prices, in Germany and elsewhere in Europe have risen. Our exports to China, they're down on other years as well. Similarly, with regard to pig meat, that it's actually other countries, other markets that are driving that strong price performance and export performance.
And Joe, I'll just touch then on the PGI for Irish grass-fed beef. Now, I spoke to your colleague Mark Zegan, Bord Bia, recently about it. And sometimes when applications go into Europe like this, and it sounds like a lot of paperwork and a lot of marketing and everything, and beef farmers, at home in their shed, don't understand what it'll mean for them. If we get this, I think now a decision will be made in the next couple of weeks. If we get status of a PGI for Irish grass-fed beef, what will that mean to the beef farmer on the street or on the field, as the case may be?
Yeah, and Stella, so we're at the very, very final stage. We've been knocking away at this, I suppose, again, similarly for 2.5 years. There have been a few hiccups and a few stumbles along the way. Again, not to dwell on it or to blame anyone. Obviously, everyone is entitled to, their opinion and to be consulted and to voice their views on it. But thankfully, we're at our final consultation phase now within the European Commission, and they'll be due to basically close that consultation phase around the end of November. And then, again, based on our previous experience, we don't anticipate that there will be any major contention or any issues after that. And very soon after that, we expect that we'll be granted this PGI status. We'll be able to go out and basically give Irish grass-fed beef its due recognition in terms of being able to give it this PGI label. That's basically a certificate of excellence to some degree. It's one that's very well recognized in a lot of countries. You don't see that many PGIs on shelves or even referred to here in Ireland. But in the likes of Italy, France, Spain, likes of those markets, it's something that's really, really well understood and acknowledged, and consumers are familiar with it and they know it, and they pay a price premium for it, which is ultimately where we want to get to. Approximately half of our beef exports go to continental Europe, so certainly in those markets we're going to be really pushing this hard, along with the key exporters. Obviously, Bord Bia will be using it in marketing, and then the processors themselves, hopefully, in their relationships and conversations with customers, they'll be leveraging it in order to get it onto packs, get it onto supermarket shelves, and again, in tandem with that, we'll be, giving it the appropriate advertising and promotion and marketing and so on. So, like, PGIs, they vary greatly, from, champagne and Prosecco to, things like cheese and Parma ham. But in each case, they are associated with a premium product. And, in each case as well, they're associated with a premium price. So that's not to say that every kilo of beef that comes from a carcass is going to end up being sold as, under that PGI and at a premium price. But certainly the intention, and all along our communications around this, was to deliver to farmers, more sustainable returns from the marketplace. And, sure, how will we identify the animals? It's using our data that we have coming through the quality assurance system that farmers have been engaging with, thankfully, in really, strong numbers for a number of years. We have a grass-fed standard, so that's basically confirming what we already know, that the vast majority of farmers employ a very grass-based system, using grazed grass and ensiled grass or silage to the highest degree, complemented with, it's not all that. There is some concentrate feed fed as well, and that's okay. That can make up to 10% of their diet during their lifetime, and the vast majority of, steers and heifers will meet those requirements. So we don't expect that this is going to lock out, or, that farmers are going to be looking at their neighbours and saying, they're in, but I'm out. It'll be, very inclusive. The vast majority of those steers and heifers will qualify for it.
Finally, Breifne, I might just quickly touch on, for example, programs. Now, I know you do a lot of work with the Advantage Beef program and what farmers are doing to improve. The word sustainability was mentioned by Joe there, maybe in an economic sense, but we also are trying to be environmentally sustainable. What sort of Do you think that there is a bit of a culture change in beef farming now where there is better breeding, there's more cognizance of the environmental footprint of agriculture now, and farmers are taking action in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely, Stella. And I suppose one thing that's really positive to see now is that it's really been industry-led over the last number of years. We're seeing a number of the processors bring out various different sustainability schemes and offering farmers some sort of a financial incentive for being involved in these schemes. A lot of the results that's coming from these schemes are also showing, these sustainability schemes are also showing that the more environmentally sustainable cattle are also the more economically sustainable cattle, because I suppose the lower slaughter age, the better performance, and the better daily live weight gain over the course of their life. So yeah, I think farmers are really taking up the measures, and in cases where it's bringing about benefits to them and their enterprise.
We're just running out of time there on our beef panel discussion, so I'm going to have to wrap it up, but I very much want to thank our panellists, our own Breifne O'Brien, technical beef writer with Agriland, Joe Burke, who's Meat and Livestock Senior Manager with Bord Bia, and of course Pierce Kelly, Head of Drystock with Teagasc. We will head back out to the ploughing site now to the Agriland team, but do stay tuned because we've more live panel discussions coming up here from the Agriland Pavilion.